Hi, everyone. This is Kent, and I really appreciate you taking the time to watch my presentation entitled Eat as You Are Designed and Thrive. For the past 30 years, myself, various doctors, athletes, environmentalists, animal rights advocates, we've all enthusiastically been sharing this human and earth saving information about the power and the importance of a low fat, whole food, plant only diet and lifestyle. Unfortunately, there is one question that just won't go away. Where do you get your protein? Despite the biggest, strongest, longest living animals on Earth who only eat plants, where will I get my protein is humans' number one concern. Every animal on Earth is biologically designed to eat the food that's meant to consume, including us. Protein is the problem. Unfortunately, it's not the cure, especially animal protein. And by the way, fat of all types is also a problem. You, all of you humans, are not designed to eat animals or processed man made junk. When we do, health problems follow. Humans like to think of themselves as carnivores. They'll say, well, I'm a carnivore, I need my meat. Well, no, you're not a carnivore. Everything about your design is the opposite of a true carnivore. We have small little mouths, and inside those mouths, we have small little blunt teeth, where a true carnivore has a big, wide mouth and very sharp teeth for ripping into its prey. We have a very small stomach, and true carnivores have a very large stomach, which can able to eat a ton of food and sleep for a week at a time until they need to eat again. In those stomachs, we have a very low acidic stomach. That's why we're popping Tums all day long every time we eat a high acid meal, where a carnivore's stomach is very high acidic, which can even break down the bones of the animal it's eating. We have the longest intestine of any species on the planet relative to our size. It's about 10 times the length of our torso. Where a true carnivore, because it wants to get that meat in and get it out before it starts to rot and putrefy, has an intestinal system only about 3 to 5 times the body length. We have to eat vitamin C, otherwise we get a thing called scurvy. And scurvy is a building block of tearing down collagen. So we need that collagen so we can't get scurvy. Where a true carnivore, they make their own vitamin C. Another very obvious indicator that we're not designed to eat meat is that a true carnivore can eat other animals and never get arteriosclerosis, never clog their arteries. Where humans, that is the number one cause of death in this world, is heart disease, where the animals that we eat cannot be removed from our arteries unless we stop eating them. What we eat and what we breathe is carried throughout our body in our circulatory system. And when our arteries and our veins can't get those vital nutrients to our trillions of cells, the oxygen from the air and the food that we eat, they get impaired. Here's a short video of what our blood flow looks like before we eat a high-fat meal, especially saturated fat from animals, then after a high-fat meal. And you can see why, if we eat a high-fat meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we're going to have a hard time getting nutrients to our body, to our cells. As you watch the beginning of this video, you see that we have a cardiovascular system. When the blood is running clearly, it runs like a roaring river. But then right after a high fatty meal, it looks like we have a sewer system in our body, which in my opinion, we do when we eat dead, decaying animals. As I said earlier, heart disease is the number one killer of humans on this earth. Here's what a lifetime of eating animals will do to your arteries.
Nice fella, but I was impressed with all the fat in his bloodstream. We took Mr. Phillips down to the operating room, and I gave him 1,000 micrograms of fentanyl and put him to sleep, and the surgeon opened up his chest and opened up his aorta and opened up his coronary arteries. And what the surgeon started pulling out of Mr. Phillips' arteries were great, long, yellow, greasy, sausage-like formations of fat that looked like this. What you're looking at is a plug of material called atherosclerosis. And this is the plug of fat that built up in a man's arteries. The artery was a tube coming out at you from the screen. The artery wall has been cut away, and you're just looking at the fat that built up. It started around the edge of the blood vessel and started moving in on the blood flow channel as the years went by. And the blood flow channel got smaller and smaller and smaller till only this dark red spot was left for the blood flow to come through. And when a clot formed here, it stopped the blood flow completely through that artery. And because it happened in this man's right coronary artery, it stopped the blood flow to his heart and bought him a ticket to the autopsy table. This is the #1 cause of death of people in North America. Every 30 seconds on this continent, Canada included, somebody grabs their chest and falls over with a heart attack. This is animal fat clogging up the arteries. When you send this material down to the pathologist and you ask him to analyze it, the report always comes back the same: saturated fat and cholesterol. It's animal fat. The pathology report never, ever, ever contains the words remnants of broccoli, rice, and tofu. It's animal fat. The good news is when you stop running animal fat through your bloodstream, this stuff melts away.
While heart disease is the #1 cause of death, #2 cause of death is also caused by eating animals, and that is cancer. And there's multiple causes. The protein itself and the growth hormones in the animal flesh is what's feeding cancer and making it grow.
It more relates to how we fertilize that, how we promote those cancer cells to grow over time. That's where nutrition comes into play. Nutrition comes into play back here too, but it's particularly prominent during this phase. And animal protein, as we started doing the research, we could experimentally, we could turn on the growth of these cells. They go much more rapidly when they were fed animal protein.
Breast cancer specialist Dr. Christy Funk, even though she wasn't educated in nutrition in medical school, she has now taken it upon herself to become one of the most educated people on nutrition. And she has discovered that animal protein is the ignition to cancer.
After about 3 straight weeks of looking into all of this science behind what animal protein and what animal fat do to you inside your body as a cellular response, skyrocketing estrogen levels, making growth factors go through the roof, hitting the immune system, creating angiogenesis, blood vessel genesis creation, right? The creation of new blood flow to these sinister little cancer cells that then get the nutrients they need not only to grow, but they just created their exit strategy straight out of the blood to your liver or bone. So, overwhelmed by these clear processes that happen inside the body, I was equally stunned by the power of plants to utterly stop, prevent, reverse those same processes inside your body.
What's the third leading cause of death, you may ask?
Welcome back. Johns Hopkins researchers have analyzed medical death rate data over an 8-year period and found more than 250,000 deaths per year are due to medical error here in this country. The Centers for Disease Control now ranks as the third leading cause of death.
I don't know about you, but I've made up my mind to take my health into my own hands and do everything I can to keep myself healthy. And that means a plant-only diet. Now, here's a doctor who, despite learning nothing in medical school, decided to learn about the power and the importance of a whole food, plant-based diet and what happens when you change your diet.
The where cardiovascular disease has its inception, its onset, its beginning, is when we progressively injure the life jacket and the guardian of our blood vessels, which happens to be that delicate innermost lining, the endothelium. And what truly makes the endothelium so magical is the molecule of gas, nitric oxide, that it produces, which is the great protector and salvation of all of our blood vessels because of its remarkable functions. For example, nitric oxide will keep all the cellular elements within our bloodstream flowing smoothly like Teflon rather than Velcro. Number 2, nitric oxide is the strongest blood vessel dilator in the body. When you climb stairs, the arteries to your heart, to your legs, they widen, they dilate. That's nitric oxide. Number 3, nitric oxide keeps the wall of the artery from becoming thick and stiff or inflamed, protects us from getting high blood pressure, hypertension. Number 4, and this is the absolute key. Number 4, a safe and normal amount of nitric oxide will protect us all from ever developing blockages or plaque. However, anybody who develops cardiovascular disease, whether they're in New York, Chicago, London, Berlin, is because in the previous decades they now have so sufficiently trashed, injured, compromised, and turned their endothelial system into a train wreck. They no longer have enough nitric oxide to protect themselves from making blockages and plaque. But the good news here is this. This is not a malignancy. And once you get patients to stop ever again passing any morsel through their lips that is going to further destroy an already train-wrecked endothelium, then rapidly the endothelial system recovers, makes enough nitric oxide so not only can you halt the disease, but often we'll see significant elements of disease reversal. Now, you're probably asking, what are the foods that every time we eat them, we injure the endothelial cells? Any drop of oil. Olive oil, corn oil, soybean oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, coconut oil, palm oil, oil in a cracker, oil in a piece of bread, oil in a salad dressing. Oil injures endothelial cells, as does anything with a mother or a face. Meat, fish, chicken, fowl, turkey, and eggs, and dairy, milk, cream, butter, cheese, ice cream.
Diabetes is considered the next black plague. It's spreading across the planet like wildfire. Pre-diabetics and diabetics. Everyone wants to blame sugar, but sugar is just a symptom. That sugar wants to get to your muscle and do its job, and get to your brain and do its job. The problem, as always, is animal fat.
Type 2 diabetes is already the #1 cause of adult onset blindness, kidney failure, and surgical amputations. This is metformin, the drug most commonly prescribed to treat type 2 diabetes and prediabetes. Its side effects are diarrhea, nausea, physical weakness, and fatigue, and it doesn't work very well. At least not nearly as well as a different treatment that is less expensive and has no negative side effects. So why aren't doctors prescribing this better treatment? Well, because it's not a drug, it's a diet. In one study by Dr. Neil Barnard and other researchers funded by the National Institutes of Health, a group of participants were asked to do just 2 things: eat only plants, no meat, dairy, or eggs, and choose low-fat foods. They didn't have to exercise, count carbs, or portion out their food. They could eat as much as they wanted. After 3 months, the researchers looked at the participants' A1C values. Analyzing A1C values, which measure long-term blood glucose control, is the best way to see if a diabetes treatment is working. The better your body's ability to control blood glucose, the lower your A1C value. A healthy person not living with diabetes has an A1C of 5.6 or below. The group eating a low-fat, vegan diet saw an A1C improvement that was equal to or better than the typical results achieved by using oral medications like metformin. As a big bonus, the vegan group saw bad cholesterol levels drop by 20%, and they also lost significantly more weight. And this group found it easier to stick to this diet than the standard diabetes diet because, like I said, they could eat as much as they wanted and didn't have to count their carbs. So let's take a step back for a minute. What actually causes prediabetes and type 2 diabetes? Okay, time for a quick biology lesson. When you eat carbohydrates, your body breaks them down into individual sugar molecules, including glucose. Glucose then circulates in the blood until it's taken up by tissues to be stored or burned for energy. Think of insulin as the key that unlocks the door to let glucose in the blood enter your brain, liver, muscle, and other tissues. Diabetes happens when your body can't unlock millions of cellular doors, so the glucose is trapped in your blood and can't get inside your tissues to be used for energy. In type 2 diabetes and prediabetes, the issue is insulin resistance, which basically means that the body is resisting against what insulin is trying to do. The culprit causing this resistance is fat. When you eat fat, some gets burned for energy and some gets stored in your fat tissue. But if you eat more than your body can use or has room to store, some of it ends up getting stored in your liver and muscle cells too. Over time, these cells get clogged up. It's like putting gum inside the lock that insulin is trying to unlock in order to get glucose into the cell. Scientists have known for more than 85 years that eating a high-fat diet, especially a diet high in fat from animal foods and processed foods, causes insulin resistance. So that's why a plant-based diet is so powerful in preventing and even reversing type 2 diabetes.
Now you're probably thinking, okay, if I'm not supposed to eat animals, what am I supposed to eat?
If all you eat is fruits and vegetables, your protein intake is going to be around 7%. And if all you eat is fruits and vegetables, your fat intake is going to be 7 to 9%. So if all you eat is fruits and vegetables, incorporated in those fruits and vegetables is enough protein and enough fat for us to do fine, to fall into the parameters that are recommended between 3 and 10. Because if you go over 10% fat, predictable health decline, over 10% protein, predictable health decline, below 3. And if you're somewhere between 3 and 10 on fat and 3 and 10 on protein, your carbohydrate intake, since there's only 3 sources of calories, your carbohydrate intake has to, by definition, be above 80. Hence, 80-10-10. As a guideline, as a pretty rough shot for not, I never eat a bite of an avocado. Of course I do. I eat nuts and seeds, but my overall average of calorie intake through the course of a week, a month, a year is always going to be more than 80% of my calories come from carbohydrates and fewer than 10% fat, fewer than 10% protein.
Well, wait a minute. If you're not eating animal protein, how can you build muscle?
The first thing you got to know is the most important nutrient for muscle growth is carbohydrates, specifically the glucose that the carbohydrates break down into. That is absolutely essential, not only for maintaining muscle size, strength, and performance, but also building on that size, strength, and performance. And when you look at the muscle composition, you'll understand why. 3/4 of skeletal muscle tissue is actually made up of water and glucose combined, or water and glycogen. And muscle stores water and glycogen to a 3-to-1 ratio, meaning for every 1 molecule of glycogen, which is stored glucose, you get 3 molecules of water. Only about 24% of muscle mass is actually made of protein. When it comes to maintaining and building growing muscle hypertrophy, you need to do whatever you can to maintain what you have. And so having a high carbohydrate and high water-rich diet is ideal for doing so. And this is where fruits really come out to shine.
It's essential to build muscle as we get older. But building muscle doesn't come from eating a bunch of animals. If that were true, our country would look like a bunch of bodybuilders. But instead, we're one of the fattest, sickest nations on this earth. Getting muscles comes from hard work, no matter what you're eating. All you need to do is eat enough calories and work hard, and the muscles will grow. To make muscles grow, you need load and you need time. The load is the weight, the time is the repetitions. If you're looking to build muscle, you use a little less time, a little bit more load, so more weights, less reps. If you're looking for more endurance and sports-related activities, then it's a little bit more time, a little higher reps, a little less weight. Time over load is how you build muscle, not eating animals. You have to work at it. It comes from hard work. Everyone improves when they switch to a plant-only diet and eat as you're designed. Here's a couple great success stories out of the millions of success stories of people who switched to a low-fat, whole-food, plant-only diet.
Before I went plant-based, I ate very unhealthy, and I was working around the clock. And you know, when you work a lot, you end up making very unhealthy food choices and exercise choices and everything else. I tried a couple of pretty unhealthy diets that were kind of fad diets, and they never lasted very, very long. But my blood pressure and my cholesterol always stayed somewhat reasonable. And then a couple of years ago, it started escalating rapidly. And what happened was my heart started racing. I started getting shortness of breath. and getting these blinding headaches, and I thought, and my weight was going up, and I thought, something's not right, I need to go to the doctor. And so I went to the doctor, and the doctor did all my numbers, and it had escalated even more than it had before. And so she was alarmed as well and said, okay, we need to do something about this. She said, because you're going down a very bad path. And I've always been one of those folks that uses analogies. So in my head, immediately what popped into my head was, I'm barreling towards a cliff, you know? I mean, she said, scared me to death that I'm barreling towards a cliff, because as we talked about my family's health history, there's death from heart disease and diabetes and strokes and high blood pressure and cancer. All that's in my family history. And so as she and I talked about it, I just had this vision of going towards a cliff very quickly, and that all these escalating numbers was just accelerating my approach to the cliff. And that's just how it was in my head. And so she said, in order to slow this down, we need to put you on some medications. And because I had started that analogy in my head, when she said we need to slow it down, what I thought was, I don't want to slow down because I'm still approaching the cliff. I'm just approaching it more slowly, and that's not okay to me. And so I said, okay, well then that's not a good alternative. What's another alternative? I want to get on a different path. I want to turn away from the cliff. And she said, well, there's one way you could actually change directions, but it's not easy. And I said, okay, I didn't ask for easy, I just asked for a different option. And she said, you can adopt a plant-based diet. And so she said it was going to be very, very hard. And what I have found is it really isn't that hard. You know, she scared me to think I'll never be able to do this. And what I have found is it's really very easy, because once you start feeling better, it makes it easier. And once you stop eating, you know, all the dairies and the meat and all the other things, your taste buds change. And so many things taste great to me now that it makes it very, very easy. I never have days where I wish I were eating the way I used to, because I feel great every single day. And all those warning signs of heading towards a cliff, they're gone. You know, the cholesterol, the heart rate, the blood pressure, all of those things just went right down to where they should be. And so there's no medication, and there's nothing I have to do except eat these really good foods that are even easy to find when you go out to eat now. So it's really much easier, and I feel great every single day.
This way of eating works even for the most stubborn person out there, one who wants to prove it wrong even.
I want to see what happens when you take a retired truck driver who never ate well and didn't want to be there and wanted to prove it didn't work, and then see what happens when you put him on a plant-based diet? Okay. Here we go. Here's David.
At first, I wasn't impressed, you know, because I'm 66 years old and I don't like change, you know. And I drove truck for 43 years, and my diet was not real well. I ate wherever I could find room to park a truck. So they put me on this plant-based diet. First couple weeks, they called me grumpy and had a little bit of an attitude. But I was going to prove to them that it doesn't work. That was my whole objective. So I came to support my wife. It wasn't for me. So after 3 weeks, I had lost 15 pounds. Wow. Not trying. And I'm going, well, you know, I didn't know what the heck was going on. So started checking the numbers, and I'm going, you know, I couldn't believe what had happened. You know, if I was under 168 or 170, I was impressed. All of a sudden, my numbers were down to 104. And I mean, I've never been 104, ever. In 13 years, I've never seen a 104. Yeah, my temperature's higher than that. So, long story short is, you know, that theory of it wasn't going to work. The numbers don't lie. My last reading for A1C was 6.7.
That's good.
So, I mean, that was remarkable. The numbers just don't lie. So it does work. Even if you're not trying, it works. It really does.
You have to know that you were given this miraculous self-healing body, and more animal protein is not going to make it better. You're going to make it better just by staying away from the problems.
And having a background in sports and having access to athletes and all this interest in sports, it led me down an interesting road, because when I got out of school and I opened up my health retreat, and I'm fasting terribly ill people, really ill people. I'm seeing sick people who have been told by the medical people that there's nothing else can be done, which translates, when we translate that into English from medicalese, translate that in English, it means there's nothing else that we can do for you. So we're not going to waste your time anymore. We can't figure out a way to charge you for anything we're going to do. But there were people who had lost hope, and yet they still hoped. They were told nothing could be done. And I'm watching sick people get well at a fasting retreat when all we do is get out of the way and let the body heal itself by no longer putting in the negative things, the self-destructive things that they were habitually using on a daily basis. And we stopped those things and they would heal. Body heals itself, just like we always knew it did. When you get a cut, it heals itself. You get a bruise, it heals itself. You break a bone, it heals itself. And all of a sudden we've lost track of some of that. So I'm watching that happen, and I'm looking at how it happens in the most critical care situations, like the intensive care unit of a hospital. You look in the intensive care unit of a hospital, and there's their temperature, blood pressure, respiration rate, how much fluid goes in, how much fluid goes out, how everything's being monitored all the time. And they're trying to keep you in very, very tight parameters, a condition that you would call homeostasis, where things hardly change at all, and just drip the nutrition into people. And even if they're in a coma, they're being given the exact same stuff. They're being given a clear fluid that's got sugar and salt in it. Basically, it's got sugar and salt.
Yeah.
And they get well enough to leave the intensive care unit and go back to the hospital, hopefully to get even better than that and go home someday. But somehow, nobody in the intensive care unit goes up to the doctors and says, "Where do you get your protein?"
If you think another pill is the answer to your health problems, unfortunately, you're mistaken. You have to start eating the way we're designed to eat, as my new favorite doctor, Dr. Rogers, explains.
Drug can do this. What drug will optimize body weight? It will also reverse and prevent hypertension, will reverse and prevent diabetes, will reverse and prevent coronary artery disease, will prevent gallstones, will prevent constipation, will prevent abdominal pressure syndrome as described by Dennis Burkitt, including varicose veins, varicocele, diverticulosis, diverticulitis, colon carcinoma, colon polyps, appendicitis, hiatal hernia of the stomach into the chest with gastroesophageal reflux, GERD, okay, then subsequent esophagitis, Barrett's esophagus, esophageal carcinoma, prevents inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome, prevents autoimmune disease, prevents leaky gut, prevents stroke, reduces the risk of dementia dramatically, prevents spinal degeneration with all of these diseases that all go together: DISH, diffuse idiopathic skeletal hyperostosis, OPLL, ossification of the posterior longitudinal ligament, OLF, ossification of the ligamentum flavum, Bostrop's disease. They're all really variation of the same theme. There is no drug that can do this. There's no drug that can do any one of these long-term reliably, okay, by itself. But the low-fat, low-sodium vegan diet with no oil, it easily does all of these things simultaneously, like that. So why is that? Why is it so powerful? And isn't it obvious? Because it is the species-specific optimal diet for humans. Yes, it's true, we're omnivores, we can colonize the entire planet and manage to get by, but for optimal health longevity, this is the way to go. And why would that be the case? Again, because it's a species-specific optimal diet.
I can't emphasize how inexpensive and simple it is to eat a plant-only diet. Here's another fantastic doctor explaining which foods you should include in every meal and how simple it is to put together a plant-based meal.
So here's the question. If the way we're eating is speeding up aging, what can we do to slow it down or even reverse it? And I'll tell you, the answer isn't hidden. It's right in front of us. It's in the kitchen of long-living families, in the soil of small gardens, and I'll tell you, in the data from some of the world's most respected nutrition studies. Across decades of research, from Eat Lancet Commission to JAMA Internal Medicine to Nature Medicine, 5 foods continually rise to the top again and again. They show up in the blue zones, they show up in clinical trials, and they show up in the daily meals of those who age well, live independently, and maintain their cognitive clarity well beyond their 80s, 90s, and beyond. So I'll tell you, these aren't exotic foods. They aren't something that you have to ship in from elsewhere. You won't need a supplement aisle or a prescription. I'm gonna tell you, here's what they are. Whole grains, the ancient energy source that fuels your microbiome and regulates your metabolism. Some might say it's the same stuff that the gladiators ate. Number 2, vegetables. These are nature's pharmacy, right? They're filled with antioxidants and they fight the cellular damage. Number 3, nature's candy. Colorful fruits, polyphenol-rich powerhouses that protect your brain and your heart. Next, nuts. They're small but mighty. They have healthy fats and they aid in longevity with activating compounds. Then you have legumes, beans, peas, lentils. They stabilize the blood sugar and lower inflammation. I'll tell you, together, these 5 categories, they form the nutritional foundation of the longest lived people on earth. They are simple, affordable, powerful, and I'll tell you what, their benefits are not just theoretical, they actually are physiological. But let's be honest, information without application is just trivia, right? So we're not on Jeopardy. The question is, how do you make this real in your daily life? Because the key isn't about perfection, it's about consistency. You don't have to move to Okinawa, Japan, or another blue zone area and grow all your own food just to start living longer. You just have to make small, consistent, intentional, powerful choices again and again. Let me show you how. So I want you to start off with 1 meal a day. Begin by upgrading just 1 meal. Breakfast is a great one really to start. Overnight oats, make it simple. You're busy on the go with steel cut oats, blueberries, walnuts, chia seeds, a drizzle of almond milk, and a savory option. Or, you know, I like to sprinkle a little bit of nutmeg and cinnamon on top because I'll tell you, spice is a variety of life. And so the cinnamon is so powerful at helping with blood sugar too as well. Or I might choose a savory option like quinoa and black beans, a bowl with avocado and greens. Now for lunch, you want lunch with intention. Don't leave it to chance. Don't go to the little food truck that's out there. Swap the fast food for fast fiber. Build a salad that's not just leaves, right? People think you just eating a salad that has nothing in it. It's life, right? You want mixed greens, chickpeas or lentils or black beans, roasted sweet potatoes, pumpkin seeds, drizzle it with some olive oil and balsamic vinaigrette, add a side of whole grain toast or just a piece of fruit. And I'm gonna tell you what, you got a metabolic and microbiome upgrade. Now dinner is foundation. I'll tell you, dinner is your opportunity to nourish yourself deeply, right? So I want you to think veggie stir fry with tofu and brown rice, a lentil stew with whole grain bread, or maybe a bean chili topped with avocado and cilantro on top of a sweet potato or a russet potato that's there, because these aren't sacrifices. They're strategies for energy, for clarity, and longevity. Now, here's my top Healthy Heart Doc #1 snack favorite, dessert favorite. Instead of reaching for the processed snacks or sugary desserts, I want you to try a smoothie bowl, right? A nourishing treat that feels indulgent, but fuels longevity. So here's my simple go-to. First, I start off with my frozen fruit. Everything has to be frozen. I don't use ice. Frozen berries, a banana that's frozen, so maybe some spinach, and then I have unsweetened almond milk, about 1/2 of a cup. I blend that on high until it gets nice and thick. I want it thick like ice cream, like soft serve ice cream. I pour that into a bowl or I spoon it out, and then I'll top it with sliced fruit. Maybe sprinkle blueberries or slice some peaches on top if they're in season, some chia seeds, pumpkin seeds, or maybe a sprinkle of granola or crushed walnuts or pistachios. Yeah, I'll tell you what, it's colorful, it's satisfying, and it's packed with fiber, antioxidants, and healthy fats. So whether you enjoy it as a midday boost or a feel-good dessert, I'm actually getting hungry right now, it's a delicious way to eat for energy and longevity.
I know that there are a lot of you out there trying everything you can to help your problems, from high inflammation to high blood pressure to high cholesterol, arthritis. All of these are associated with an animal-based diet. All the pills and therapies in the world won't work until you change to a low-fat, whole food, plant-only diet. The problem is not another pill. The problem is you're eating the wrong food for your design. The fruits and vegetables available on this earth, and by the way, there's over 80,000 edible plants on this earth, they're literally screaming at you to eat me to help whatever condition you need to help with. Just a reminder, you're not designed to eat animals. You're designed to eat plants. And you look at certain things, it's just like crazy. Anybody who cuts a carrot in half will see it looks like an eyeball. Well, carrots with the beta carotene are great for our eyes. Open up a walnut shell, it looks like a brain. Oop. The omega-3s are great for our brain, and on and on and on. Eat like we're designed to eat. The vegetables and the fruits are telling you to eat me because I will help you stay healthy. Animals do not want to be eaten. One of the biggest arguments I got when I was trying to help people understand that you're not designed to eat animals was, well, God put animals on this earth for us to eat. Well, no, he didn't. And I know some of you may not want to hear this, but here's what God has to say about what we're supposed to eat.
Hello, friends. It's been said, you are what you eat. And in many ways, this is true because what we eat becomes part of us. What we put into our bodies has a profound effect upon our physical and mental health. Perhaps this is why we are told in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31, "Therefore, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God." And just a few chapters earlier, we read, "Do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have from God? And you are not your own, for you were bought at a price. Therefore, glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's." So, how can we glorify God in our bodies? Well, one way, as we discussed in our previous video, is to stay away from harmful substances such as alcohol, tobacco, illicit drugs, caffeine, and so on. But one of the positive ways we can glorify God is to eat the diet for which our bodies were designed. And what is that diet? It comes from the Garden of Eden. We read about it in Genesis chapter 1, verse 29. "And God said, See, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed, to you it shall be for food." From the very beginning, God designed human beings to eat a plant-based diet.
One last video clip for you from one of my favorite doctors ever, Dr. John McDougall. And he sums up everything I just said brilliantly.
Protein. Every place I go, it's protein. You know, most of the gurus out there are recommending more protein, stay away from carbs. Yeah. Well, if you don't eat carbs, what are you going to eat? You're going to eat fat and protein. And some of the people that are in these low carb movements, they realize fat's not so good for you. So they hit the protein really heavily. You walk into a grocery store, a natural food store, a pharmacy. And what do you see advertised on the labels of products from everything? I'm surprised they don't have laundry detergent advertised as high or low protein. Everything's got a and they sell more protein, the better. And so what are you to think? But protein's the most important nutrient for the human being. When I was raised as a child, my parents believed that. They believed that as long as I got enough calcium and got enough protein, I'd be just fine. And so guess what they fed me? Yeah. Guess why I had terrible stomach problems? That's why I lost my tonsils. Guess why I had a stroke when I was 18? Guess why I weighed 90 pounds more than I weigh now? Because my parents believed in calcium and protein. All right, let's start at the beginning. How many cases of protein deficiency have you found? Your sister have it? Your mom? How about your best friend at the bowling alley? They got protein deficiency. They go to the doctor to get some protein supplements to solve their high blood pressure, diabetes, etc. And did you see them cured by taking all this extra protein? Did you? You've never, ever seen dietary protein deficiency. It doesn't exist. The protein requirements for a human being are so low that even in the 1800s, scientists knew that you couldn't design a diet that was too low in protein. But all we do is we fixate on protein. Well, there's a lot of money in protein. Not just in selling high protein foods, which you've identified as expensive foods like the dairy and eggs and meat, fish and chicken. These are the high income makers, real profitable foods. Look at the rundown that happens. Look at the downhill benefits financially that occur. Well, you're feeding people a high protein diet, so you're making the pharmacies rich and the drug companies rich, and you're making the doctors rich, and all their ancillary personnel, they're getting rich, and the hospitals, they're getting rich. This is a tremendous business generator to lie to the public when they've never seen a case of protein deficiency, yet they're all trying to stamp out protein deficiency by buying all these high protein products. This is detrimental. When you take in enough protein to supply your needs, you got to deal with the excess. You need a little protein. Yeah, a little protein got to kind of replace a few hairs and a few skin cells and a few gut cells. And as long as you're not growing, you need a little extra protein when you grow, but not much. It's a tiny bit, just a tiny bit to grow a baby or to grow as a child, just a little bit extra. Always the food meets it. You don't have to worry about it. But after you've supplied these basic needs for protein, which amounts to about a diet of about 3%. We say that again, 3, like 1, 2, 3, 3% of the calories need to be from protein. That's it. All right. But we are focused on high protein foods, diets, products, etc. So we're taking a lot of extra protein. What happens to that extra protein? It has to be gotten rid of because it's not stored. If it was stored, it would be stored in your muscles and you'd have these huge muscles and you'd look like a bodybuilder. Not the case. So it is processed through the liver and through the kidneys and it comes out in the urine. That's where your protein ends up, in the urine. And some of it in the gut, but most of it in the urine. That's where it goes. In the process, you overwork the liver and the kidneys. You create a condition which is an acid condition in the body. We call it acidosis. To neutralize this acidosis, you have to dissolve the bones. And there's the first step in giving you weak bones or osteoporosis. And then the bones, which are being destroyed by the acid from the protein. Well, protein has a bunch of acid in it, don't you? Protein made of amino acids. Oh, come on, you've heard about that. So you're eating all this acid, and what happens is you end up not only destroying the bones, but you end up making kidney stones, calcium-based kidney stones. Yeah, you do. And plus, think about the foods that you're being encouraged to eat that are high protein. They're the very foods that you've heard are the source of most of our environmental pollution. That's right. The animal products, because they're high on the food chain, are just loaded with DDT, pesticides, all kinds of poisons from the environment. So you're focusing on those kinds of foods. You're focused on the foods that cause autoimmune diseases. Autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and multiple sclerosis and so on are caused by a confusion that occurs between the animals we eat and the animals we are. The body gets confused and it starts attacking us when it should be attacking the foreign food proteins only, but it's not. So you get all these autoimmune diseases. The kind of foods that they recommend are high in fat, high in cholesterol. Well, you know what that leads to, right? Strokes and heart attacks. You know that. And it's low in dietary fiber. And you know the problem there, constipation. So, it goes beyond just the protein, which we isolated out in this discussion. It's the fact that the vehicles that carry the protein around are themselves deleterious. Infections, they carry infections. We catch salmonella and E. coli, staphylococci from other animals. Because we're an animal, the microbes can cross between animals. We don't catch plant diseases. You don't catch tobacco mosaic virus or Dutch elm disease or aphids. You don't catch those things. Those are plant diseases. So, you're taking on a big bargain when you believe in the protein myth. And besides that, just as an end note, I'll tell you what my challenge is for you. If you develop protein deficiency, by any means except starvation or experimental diet, if you develop protein deficiency on any natural diet, I want you to tell me first, because I want to be the one that reports it to the news, to the scientific journals. Dr. McDougall discovers the first case ever of dietary protein deficiency.
You heard the saying, people walk around saying, I got 99 problems. Well, when you don't have your health, you only got one problem. And I'm trying to help you prevent that one problem. I want to keep you healthy. And the only way to keep you healthy, it's not a pill, it's not a needle, it's not anything except what you're putting in your mouth. And what you're putting in your mouth has to be the kind of food that you're designed to eat. And that's low fat, whole food, plant only, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds. If you do that, you'll thrive. If not, I'm sorry to tell you, all the pills in the world aren't going to fix you. Thank you so very much for watching my presentation. It's really simple. Just eat real food. Food not made by man and food not killed by man. and not too much. You don't need to overeat. And mostly plants, but preferably all plants. The more plants, the less problems. Thank you again. I wish you the best.